without really thinking about it, when I say the words good girl, write down 3 things that come immediately to your mind. Okay, does everyone have 3 things? Yes. Okay, so we're going to be talking about those, but there's some flyers coming out for you that I want you to look at too. We're going to do a couple things. This is going to be a participatory talk. All right? So for those of you that may have gotten your sheets already in front of you, when you get them, there are going to be pictures, 7 different pictures of women. I want you to take a look at those and by the corresponding number, write down whether you would term them as a good girl or a bad girl. Just write that down. Okay, so I would just, by a show of hands, I would like to know, we're going to go through the 7 pictures, and I'd like to know if you would term them as a good girl or a bad girl. And the first thing I also want to say too is there is no right or wrong answer on these. It's all based on your perception and how you have been socialized about good girl. So, looking at picture number 1, how many say that she's a good girl? Okay, so everybody else would term her as a bad girl? No? You didn't get that far?
No, I didn't say yes or no for either because it's too little information. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. That's a good thing, but I'm just wondering if when you see somebody initially, do you give them a term of good or bad girl? Okay, what about number 2? Good girl or bad girl? Bad. Okay. Okay, I hear a good over here. All right. What about number 3? Good girl or bad girl? Good. And I hear, okay. So again, no right or wrong answer, right? Number 4? Bad. Oh, interesting. Okay. Now that was pretty uniform there. Okay. All right. What about number 5? Okay, mixed. What about number 6? Good girl. And number 7? Good. All right. Looks good. Okay, so remember I said there's no right or wrong answer, but the reason that I wanted you to look at some pictures is oftentimes when we see a person, and again, you may not be somebody that does this, but it does sometimes creep up where you'll see somebody and you immediately term them one way or another just by the way they choose to express themselves. How they choose to dress, how they choose to color their hair, if they choose to have tattoos, if they choose to have earrings. And this is something that I had to come to terms with myself. And I thought, why would I think of that person any differently than this person on the other side of the room? What is it inside of me that is making me put that judgment up there? They're both beautiful women. They just express themselves differently and show up as who they are differently as well. And so when I got to thinking about good girl and bad girl, now let's go to the list. And what I'd love to know, you all listed off 3 things. Who would be willing to share what they put for what they immediately came up with good girl? Yes, Mary.
Puppy, toddler, quiet.
Puppy, toddler, quiet. Okay, excellent. Others? Yes.
I could come up with boring, safe, and not mean.
Okay, boring. All right, excellent. Yes.
I put quiet, obedient, and doesn't rock the boat.
Okay. Paula.
I put cultural shame, waste of energy, people I don't like.
Okay, excellent. Yes. Go ahead, Jackie.
Rule follower makes your ways, makes everyone happy.
Okay, excellent. Any others that haven't been mentioned? Yes.
I put submissive, proper, no fun.
Okay, submissive, proper, and no fun. Did you all hear all those? Okay, anyone have anything different that wasn't mentioned that you want to mention?
I had successful, respectful, and doesn't go to jail.
Ah, okay, that's good. Okay, good. Cindy. And Cindy? Suppressed. Okay. Yes.
I put confident, listens, and a cheerful disposition.
I'm sorry, say that again. Confident?
Listens, and a cheerful disposition.
Okay, excellent. So The reason I wanted you all to list that off is obviously we all come from different perspectives. However, there is some good girl terminology or thought processes that go around being a good girl that kind of carry from generation to generation. And particularly when you look at the young girls in our lives, if you ask them about what it means to be a good girl, and I got some information from a book that's actually called, the name is going to escape me, but it's about getting rid of the good girl and helping the young ladies that are in that mindset. So when they were asked what it means to be a good girl, and again, this is teenage girls, listen to these responses. Follow the rules. I can't get mad. I need to be respectful and never talk back. I need to work hard and get good grades. I need to not be bossy. We remember a talk on being boss versus bossy, right? I need to think about others' needs and feelings. I know I should not voice my opinion. And I should not show too much skin. Okay? And they also then said I should dress in a certain way, a people pleaser, I have to be perfect, I can't hurt anybody's feelings, and it's how I've been socialized, it's what I've been told. So of course, a lot of those are around what we had covered as well, and I do want to say that obviously with good girl, there are some sexual innuendos that come into that as well. That was not my intent to go into that today. Okay, this is more about the good girl socialization or what you've been taught and how it may be carrying into your spirit, your soul today. And obviously we have some enlightened women in the room because of the responses that you're all giving. It shows that we have already learned that some of those good girl things that we may have been taught as youngsters have rubbed off, or we've gotten rid of them because they didn't fit us anymore. There was something about them that kept us from really expressing who we are. And so when I think about good girl, I have to tell you, in coaching many women, oftentimes what does come up is this thing about being the right way that I'm supposed to be or that I should be. And to break out of that can be very difficult because, again, the message is so ingrained. And even Jackie talked about it in her book today with, this all carries on. It might not be called the good girl. It might have other terms. But what I'm finding is that oftentimes if there are things that we try to cover up, they will bubble up ultimately. And good girl is one of them. Some of the messages that we get from good girl they bubble up and then oftentimes we'll feel bad. One that I haven't mentioned is feeling or getting very emotional, particularly in a business setting. How many times have you been in a business setting, especially for any of you that worked in corporate, where you were surrounded by maybe 20 men and 14 women or 10 women, probably less women to men, and you would feel some emotion coming up and you did everything you possibly could to keep that emotion down. It was stuck here, it was just stuck, almost painful to a point, but you could not cry in front of those men, particularly if you were going to prove yourself as a businesswoman. Anyone been there in corporate? All right, so big for me, and so my story is, I will tell you, I worked at the Federal Reserve Bank for over 20 years. Obviously, there are a lot of men in that industry, and there were many women. But when I started to think about good girl was about 5 years after I left the Fed. I started to realize I had worked myself up into a decent position of management, but every time I went to a meeting, and the meeting room is very typical, you have your conference room in the center, right, and you have the chairs around the side. Guess where I sat every time? On the side, behind the men, always. And I got to thinking about it later. Why in the world did I do that? I had just as much right to be at that table as they did, but what was it in me? What was it that kept me in that back seat? And trust me, I was very comfortable in that back seat then. I didn't think anything about that I wasn't at the table. And I oftentimes would never voice my opinion because I was worried about them thinking, oh, she's too emotional, or she's too bossy. And so it started to bubble up, and that's when I started to think about good girl versus bad girl, or the term that I would really like us to incorporate is moving from good girl to a real girl or a real woman. And Right, yeah, a real woman, right? And that's what we have in this room, and I think that's what we all enjoy so much because we are all on growth paths. We're moving toward what is right for us, what feels good for us, and how we can fully express ourselves. And one of my goals, definitely in life, is that when women are fully expressed, it is one of the most beautiful things that you can actually witness and be. So one other story I will tell you and why that is my passion, and that is my mother died when she was fairly young. She was 67. And she had 6 kids, and I'm the youngest of the 6. And so I was the luckiest of the 6 because I got to see my mother start to come out of her shell. She gave to us all the time. She had a wringer washer, if anyone remembers wringer washers. Okay? She hung her clothes out on the line every week, and of course that was my chore too. And then we soaked them. Do you remember that? What, dampen them, put them in the refrigerator for a day, and then you iron them the next day, right? Okay? Every week she did this, and of course then took care of my dad and all of the other things. She was church organist and all kinds of things, but my mother never took time for herself until my brothers and sisters were gone and I was the only one left. And I started to see my mom come out of her shell and start to be expressive and do things that she had left behind because she was being the good girl, and particularly in her era, it was really ingrained into her to be the good girl to take care of her family, which please don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying you shouldn't take care of your family. That's not the point. The point is that it's part of, you have to take care of yourself as well as take care of your family. So my mom, when I saw her start to express herself, I saw a different woman emerge. Suddenly, instead of being unhappy all the time or somewhat depressed and feeling like she was, that resentment that would come through, that started to disappear. And I started to see sunshine, and I started to see her singing again, and she started taking piano lessons. She started going and leading a garden club, and then she got sick. And so she wasn't able to fully continue on with expressing herself. And that's where my passion for helping women really understand and take that time for themselves to understand what is it that you really want? What is it that you're pushing down because maybe good girl is coming up for you? Because good girl, what I see oftentimes is that superwoman that wants to emerge. And trust me, I know in this room and in other areas in our world, in our country, women are amazing. We are amazing because we can do so many things. But we tend to do not only multitasking, we're trying to do quadruple, quintuple, and sextuple processing all the time, and oftentimes then we are the ones that don't get the time to just breathe. So when you think about a supermom, let me list off some of the things that supermoms, when you ask women in a later year, what does it mean? Here's what they say. I need to say yes to everyone who asks for my help. I need to volunteer, even when I don't have time. I feel like a horrible person when my emotions get the better of me and I start to yell at somebody or lose my temper. I'm constantly striving to get to work-life balance, but I can never get it figured out. I'm working very hard and I have to have a perfectly kept house because if somebody comes over and my house is dirty, I'm embarrassed. That's where we go to Kim and get help with that. Get that sexy back on, right? Okay. They have the need to feel creative or crafty. They don't always say what they need because they want to not hurt somebody's feelings or rock the boat. They rarely take time for themselves because everyone else's needs are more important than theirs. I don't feel like I'm accomplishing anything unless I'm doing at least 2 things at the same time, and they need to both be done well. I always need to be put together with my clothes and makeup. I should have a perfect figure. I should work out regularly. My hair and makeup should always be done. I should have a successful business career and also be able to take care of my kids and my parents and my husband's parents if needed. My house is one that all the kids, I want them to all come and be there. I like to be active in my community, active in my church, active in my kids' schools. My kids have no issues and they're all well liked. Okay? So I have it all together.
That's right.
That's interesting that one got. But oftentimes that's what women really, we take that on ourselves. If our children are acting who they are, oftentimes when people, I will tell you that I know many people who have seen this. If you have a child that is being themselves, there's oftentimes judgment that comes from another side of the room, because there's not an understanding that here's an expressive child. It's not the mother or the father's responsibility, this is my opinion, their responsibility to squelch that creativity. They may want to keep them quieter, but you don't want to keep them from being who they are. So anyway, that's my thought. So couple more. Have it all together like Martha Stewart. They feel like they need to do everything to be liked and accepted. And here's some real ones that probably are going to feel similar. You feel exhausted, but you're challenged with taking time for yourself. And you're longing for something different, and you don't even know what it is. And you don't even know where to start to get to that different place. So I'm wondering, when I went through that list, do any of you have maybe more than 5 of those that kind of resonated with you? 60. Okay. So I think if you often find, when we think about good girl, and you all did great on all of those exercises, and I really love that we said, I don't have enough information about this young woman to know, is she a good girl or a bad girl? And if we even want to use that terminology, but it is a phrase and words that have been used time and time again. And where I particularly hear them, some of you know this, but I have the wonderful experience of playing Mrs. Claus in the Christmas time. And I can't tell you how often I have watched a young girl, when she comes up to Santa, and he'll say to her, have you been a good girl or a bad girl? And the mother stands behind and says, she's been a bad girl, Santa, so don't give her anything she needs. Now, the mother is probably teasing, like making it's funny to the mother, not really thinking how that's impacting. Yeah. But I will because I sit next to Santa, I will watch that young girl's face just absolutely collapse. And she then doesn't want to tell Santa anything. I don't want anything, Santa. I don't want anything. And so that goes to the heart of how good girl can carry into the spirit of a young girl, and then carries into them as a toddler, as a young woman, and as an adult woman, and into that superwoman. And I know you all are superwomen and can be superwomen, but just know you have permission to take some time for yourself, to be who you are. And it's important for your development, for the love of yourself, and so that you can be who you want to be in the world moving forward. And that's why I wanted to bring up good girl. This is a new topic for me, and so I really appreciate that you all were willing to listen. And I have a favor to ask of you. On the back of your sheet, I have a couple questions. And as I develop this talk, I would like to really get to the heart of the matter so that it has meaning for other women. And oftentimes it's not going to be talking to women that are on a path like we all are. So I would love some of your thoughts about what it means for good girl, bad girl, and if you'd take the time to answer the questions, I would really appreciate it. And then if you would hand that in, what I'd like to do is, I have a free resource that is going to be, it's actually in development, it should be done in the next day or two. That is about the 7 myths of being a good girl and how to break the good girl habit, that I will share with you. If you would be willing to give me your sheet, I will use your name and email for that purpose. And if you'd like to be added to my email list, you can just say email list and I will add you to my email list as well. Are there any questions or comments that you all have about good girl? Thoughts? Yes, Jackie?
Keep going with this topic.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
When you mentioned Mrs. Claus and Santa, wouldn't it be great if Santa didn't even ask that question? And that hurt me because I'm like, oh yeah, that's a bizarre question. What about, come to me, beautiful soul, or but are you a good person or a bad person? It's really what they're saying. Are you right or wrong?
Absolutely. And I think even too, in defense of the parents, I will say, again, those are words that we've used for millennia, asking and telling little girls and little boys too. I mean, I see the boys' faces do the same thing, because, were you a good boy? Oh, and then I found myself actually asking it one time and I said, whoa, stop, no. I'm not going to ask them that. So I always would find it. And I will suggest it to the Santa because I work with him every year, and I'm sure he'd be willing to do it.
It'll
Lovely
probably
guy.
take him a couple of years to break the habit.
To break the habit, yes. Yes, Laura.
No, I was going to say, though, the thing is that even though we are wanting to be this way, it's still, if you're really strong or you really have an opinion, it makes a lot of people very uncomfortable with that. So it's got to really, the culture has to change as well. Because even though we say, oh no, it's equal and everything, really deep down playing, a lot of people, it's really hard for them to, it's fearful, it makes them fearful. Like you said, you had to sit in behind the men. If you have a strong opinion, then you're, you know what, a female dog. You know?
Well,
So it's really hard to break through to getting to that point where you're talking about, which is the point. I'm like that. I don't care. I just be myself. You know, I know a lot of people are very afraid.
It can't, you know, I think Laura has a very good point. Many women, many young girls are very afraid of this breaking through and how that works. But I think the main thing is we as women, as we support ourselves, we also have the opportunity to support the young women that are in our lives and help them realize that this good girl term it encompasses something that isn't necessarily true. Okay? It's really about moving them into being a real girl and a real woman so that they can explore life and all of its fullness.
I think we have to change the language around it as well, though, and that's a big factor, I think. I think there are a lot of, I have young girls, and there are empowerment programs for them, so they are starting to learn a little bit of this, but our culture, I mean, you can talk about this from self-image standpoint, from the weight you are, or the height you are, so much of it is the language, and it's part of our culture, too. So, yeah, I loved your phrase, good girl to real woman.
Yeah.
That's a awesome catchphrase.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you all very much. I will just say, I didn't have an opportunity to say my event, so I'm going to go ahead and plug that if that's okay. I know that there's some other Mother's Day events going on, but if anyone is looking for taking some time to themselves on May 7th, which is the Saturday before Mother's Day, there is in Plano, Illinois, a lovely retreat center, the LaSalle Manor and Retreat Center. Myself and a friend of mine, her name is Debbie Kermeen, she and her husband build labyrinths in stone. We are going to be hosting a retreat that's going to be a day filled with some creativity, some walking in nature, the opportunity to have a massage with Be Well Massage. Karen's going to be joining us, and also just having some time to yourself. And one of the things we'll also do, it happens to be World Labyrinth Day, which, you know, World Labyrinth Day is all about world peace and spreading peace. And so we will walk as one at one on a beautiful outside labyrinth. And if it's raining, we also have an indoor labyrinth. So we've kind of got it covered so we can make sure we can walk. So that's on Saturday, the 7th. And I have flyers if anyone's interested, but I didn't want to put them out on every table. So any other questions or comments?
Great job.
Okay. Thank you all very much.